Hello. Welcome to a chat with Matt. I am your host, Matt Green, here for another wonderful episode, I hope. Uh, I'll go ahead and introduce my co host at this time, Mr. Eugene Emery.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, Eugene. What's up?
Oh, another fine Sunday.
No gong for you today. I couldn't get the soundboard to work.
That's all right. We're trying to avoid demographics, aren't we?
Absolutely. So today we have a guest on that I'm really excited about this episode. I'm going to go ahead and apologize now. Hopefully, I'm going to try to keep this 2 hours. I don't see us really getting any extra questions in. We'll see what happens. But this person I've been friends with since probably, the ninth grade, a little bit in middle school. We have a long history together. And he also gave me just a ton of information, way more than anybody else has. So we got a lot to talk about. So I'll go ahead and introduce my guest. It is Alan Ganska, who has already been on the show. If you watch the stream with no name, Alan's coming eventually. There he is.
There we go. Hello.
Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
I am just peachy. You got the kids corralled?
Yeah. Hannah's got them locked up right now.
Good.
In their own room.
Little monsters.
So, minimal interruptions, ideally, but I can't really promise anything.
Hey, whatever happens, happens. So we're gonna go ahead. We'll just get started. Alan Ganska, you were born June 24th, 1985, which was 2 days before me, making you older than me.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can talk about that later. But I remember you talking about how you were so proud of yourself because you thought you were the youngest kid in class, and then you met me. Mm-hmm. Then it turns out we weren't even the youngest ones. There was some other dipshit that was even younger than us. So
I don't even remember that. I must have selectively not remembered it. Who's the younger kid?
We'll talk about that later because I just called him a dipshit. So
yeah, hopefully you'll forget.
Yeah. So where were you born? Was it in Erie?
Yeah. Yeah, I was born in Erie, PA. My mom lived there way back when, and my dad lived there. That's where they grew up.
So your mom was originally from Erie?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the whole family. My grandma grew up in Erie, I believe, or Albion, and then Erie. My mom lived in Erie. My dad, his whole life, pretty much in Erie. Yeah. So they met rather young, and then had me. I don't know which hospital it was or anything like that, but yeah, I was born there and raised until I was about 10 years old.
Okay. Yeah. So what was your parents' relationship when you were born?
So I don't know a lot about it. They were split. I was one of those bastard children, which is a lot less frowned upon these days. So I don't feel bad saying that. And I'm really not ashamed of it or anything like that. So I don't really care.
Yeah.
But I think they had a young fling. I think they were dating at the time, and my mom was in high school. My dad was young as well.
One of her teachers.
I don't think so. No. And yeah, I was just born out of that. I think it was a fling. I think it was most certainly an accident, and that's it. I think they split up soon after I was born, and kind of just resigned themselves to, hey, we're gonna raise them. We're gonna do the best we can, but we're gonna do it separate because we don't. We're not jiving. Okay. They were never planned to be together. I don't think for too long.
So who did you live with most of the time?
So when I was really, really young, I don't have the exact details, but I believe I was with my mom for the most part when I was very, very young, like 1 to 2 years old. And then my mom moved in. I remember living with my mom's mom, because she was 17 when she had me. Soon after, I think we ended up moving in with her mom, my grandma. Living in her basement, but I also remember living in apartments, buildings, and various places. Not really remembered, but I think I've gleaned a few pieces of information because I don't remember a lot from when I was young. But
well, yeah. Do you know what your mom was doing for work?
I don't know the exact timeline. I know she said she worked at like Rite Aid and was a bartender at the same time. She very much for a good portion of my life until I was a teenager. She always had like I believe like multiple jobs a lot of times just to get by.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I remember. I remember that her explaining to me the Rite Aid and the bar were like right around each other, kind of thing. So I don't think she could like just walk there, but
yeah. So you said your grandma found out you existed when you were 2. Is this your dad's mom?
Yeah. So this is something I kind of found out later in life. I don't think they wanted me to know about it, my dad per se. But this was really interesting to me, and I don't know, like I don't feel weird about it. So I feel weird that they wouldn't just like let me know once I was kind of emotionally mature to kind of understand it. But apparently I was born out of wedlock. My grandpa and grandma might have been a little bit more old school than I would have known. I never really knew my grandpa. He died when I was like 6 months old. But he was apparently very strict and was a very religious. I believe they were religious, more so than my dad or my mom ever were. And it was like I was almost kept secret. And it's a weird situation. I never really asked about it once I found out about it. I actually more recently, like this year, was asking for some more details. Just because now that I have kids, I'm kind of really interested in history and how my family grew up, how my grandparents grew up, and things like that. But they kept it a secret because my grandpa was apparently very, very strict, and it probably would have like pressured them to marry, pressured them to do a bunch of stuff that would be expected kind of back in the day. And I don't think they want to do that. So I think my grandpa ended up passing away when I was very young, and then my grandma ended up finding out about me a little bit later. So I was living with my mom during that period, and eventually ended up moving in with my grandma and my dad a little bit later. I think when I was like 1 or 2 years old or something like that.
So do you know how your grandma reacted to finding out you existed?
I don't. I think I want to say just by feeling. I don't know the actual story, that she was like just stoked to have a grandkid kind of thing.
Yeah, I kind of
my feeling of her.
Yeah, I wonder if she was a little pissed that like your grandpa never, got to know that. Like,
yeah, I don't know that situation. That's how I found out. Is she kind of slipped up and told me one time, like, I didn't even know you existed for a little bit, and my dad was just like, well, you can't tell him that stuff. It's like, I guess you probably can't. Maybe you shouldn't when they're younger, but I never understood whether we didn't talk about it later on because it's fascinating, and I get different times and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would imagine she was pissed off not hearing about it until later, but I never asked her about it, so I never got that chance.
Okay. I just want to. You said your first memory was playing with a yellow glove when you were 2. How do you remember that? Why do you remember that?
I think I remember it just specifically because I was so young, and I have no idea why. I remember being in the high chair, and I think I even remember where it was, which was like my mom and I lived above a bar in Erie, and I was just in a high chair, and she gave me one of those yellow rubber gloves that you wash dishes with that like nobody uses anymore. And I think part of the reason, because it's funny that I remember it, and that's what I was entertained by. Like I probably had like a bunch of other toys that rattled and stuff, but I just remember like trying to like just mess with it, maybe trying to get it on, and it's just in my brain because it's my earliest memory, and it just somehow stuck.
Like the next day, you were just like, "Hey, I remember that yesterday. I should hold on to this memory."
Yeah, this is the moment right here. Yeah.
Well, now that you have kids and you buy all these toys, like I'm sure your mom bought a bunch of toys or whatever when you were a kid. Is it the cheapest things like a rubber glove that entertains your child?
Oh, absolutely. Like I think every parent can kind of relate with that, and you as an uncle, you could probably relate as well. But I remember growing up and my mom like making a box maze out of all the toys I got for Christmas one year, and like you just crawl through the maze or whatever. That was like one of the most amazing things. When I don't remember a damn thing I got that Christmas, but I remember that box maze.
I remember finding things to play with that like were absolute like this is so pathetic. I would take grapes, the vine. I would take the vine and I would make them like they were little trees for my like toys that I was playing with, like the action figures, or like the onions come in like that netted. I would take those and then use the netting as like nets that my toys would capture each other in. I was a very resourceful child, apparently. So
Well, you're still into Legos these days, so I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you were 3, I think that's good. Your timeline was a little wonky. I'm assuming you were doing some drinking when you wrote that up.
I was just trying to fill in a box for every year, essentially. So some of it's just a little out of order.
So when you were 3 or around then, you moved in with your dad and your grandma. What caused that?
I don't know. I never really asked about it. And once I was filling out that timeline, I now have like just a whole slew of questions for my family because I just know the timeline and it happened. I am curious about the reasoning. I would have to imagine that after my grandpa died, it was kind of divulged to my grandma, all this, and that they decided that's kind of the better place. Like my grandma was still working, but could help support. My parents were really young, and then I had I had six uncles and aunts on my dad's side, and at the time, probably like 7 or 8 cousins. Would end up with like 13, 14 cousins that all kind of lived in this like Pollock neighborhood in Erie. So I think they saw that that's just kind of the better support area. But I really do have to. I just got to ask my parents because I don't know the logic at that time. I'm just guessing. Kind of.
Well, did you still see your mom?
What's that?
Did you still see your mom?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. We very much a shared custody. I did glean so much. Like they kept a good job keeping it from me, but I could glean that they didn't like each other very much as I was growing up. But they kept it as civil as they could. I could feel they always shared custody. Never really a big issue. They never had to get lawyers involved or anything like that. Which was very good.
Well, you always want to do that, And I mean, it's also one of those things when you don't your mom sounded like she was probably struggling a lot, just being a single mom trying to get by, and your dad, what was your dad doing at the time?
I don't know exactly what he was doing when I was close to it. I believe he was like a GE worker because I know my grandma was. I think he worked at GE. He got the big factory in Erie. I don't know if it's even still going, but I think he was a factory worker there, which was not a bad situation.
At
the time.
Gotcha. Okay, so maybe it was just easier financially. So you said you had all your cousins. I assume you got real close with them, spending all that time. That was kind of your social circle as a little kid.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. Like I recall like the number in my head. We had 13. I had 13 cousins, and probably like 8 or 9 of them were in my age range. So we all lived in like a 6-block radius in Erie. With like cul-de-sacs and we could just always just go down the street to go see them and hang out. And we got close. I would say as close as you can get. I obviously don't have the experience. I was an only child, as you well know. But I would say as close as you can get to like a brother-sister kind of situation growing up without it actually being the case. Because I do think that's probably very different, a little bit more extreme. But is as close as you can get to that as anybody. We had Sunday dinners every Sunday. We'd hang out.
That's one of the things I've always liked, and I feel like I've kind of lost it, and I miss it. And I'm sure I don't know, maybe you don't, but like that growing up with your family and your cousins all the time and being so close to them. And I had the same experience. They didn't live in the same area, but we saw each other all the time. And it's an interesting thing where it's like I know what you mean. Like they're not your siblings, but they are family, and they're more than friends. It's just, do you still have any kind of relationship like that with any of your cousins?
Oh, it's probably a little difficult to say, but I've definitely distanced myself from that side of the family. So it's I don't see them nearly as much. I used to see them on holidays and stuff like that. Now it's, I'll see their Facebook posts. They probably see mine. It's very distant at this point in time.
Yeah, and it's even harder when you don't distance yourself because they start growing up and having families and having kids, and there's just no time. There's no time for cousins.
Yeah, I could argue there could always be a little bit more effort put in, but it's that's an interesting point. It can be tough sometimes thinking about.
Yeah. So then we have the Super Nintendo Christmas. Which I'm bringing this up because as long as I've known you, not so much anymore, But especially when we were growing up, you were always like huge into video games. Like that
Mhm.
was your thing. I remember you having a meltdown on me one time because I like turned off one of the systems. I think it was a PlayStation, and I turned it off as a joke because I was losing. And you were like, "You can't do that. You can erase all the everything on there if you do something like that." And I was just like, "Oh shit, man, I'm sorry."
Yeah, and I never forgave you for that moment.
But you liked your games, and you know, took them seriously. Was this kind of a catalyst for that, or did you have that before
Yeah, I
Super
mean, I
Nintendo
talked about it on
PCs?
your other podcast. It felt really good playing video games. I remember the feeling when I grew up, and I didn't get into this last time, but especially with RPGs, which I know are a little bit more popular now than they ever were back in the day. Like people would know, but I always tried to like figure out why I got hooked on those because other people don't really get. I don't think you ever really got into RPGs. Certain people really get
Somewhat,
hooked, but
yeah.
that whole like I made the joke last time, the Requiem for a Dream, that dopamine hitting. Like I looking back now, I realized I had that like
Yeah.
hardcore, and especially with RPGs, and yeah, it was just it was a good feeling when I played it. And I you know, I
Yeah.
probably latched on a little bit too much with my kids now. Like I'm a little bit wary of having the too much electronics and
Oh
being
yeah.
around it. It's a lot easier to limit. Like they, we got a tablet for them, and we can limit the time he's on it, and that's really nice. But it's something I'm wary of because I feel like if you have an addictive personality, and maybe that even goes back to being a kid, you can get latched on hardcore, and I do believe I had that.
Yeah, and I think it's even worse now. Like I feel like it's even more accessible for
Do you
kids.
do you think it's sorry to cut you off, but it's
No, no.
back in the day they had radio and TV. Like probably even before that, they had something that like catched like kids' fancies. There's always like a new technology that everybody freaks out, worries about. That it's just a normal like grow up progression for every generation involved almost. Like I've had that thought as well, like whether I'm kind of overbearing on how electronics are for Xander or not.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I personally, I think it's worse now. Like, I think it's just with the internet and that connection that you can have and how easily you can hop on. Because I think a lot of it is that, like, that social aspect. We had that too, especially when we are playing video games. Like, I love playing multiplayer games, but I think the difference was you played them with your friends, like in the same room.
Yeah.
Even if you had a bunch of them, you still had you had to physically do shit if you wanted to do that. Like you had to bring a TV over. Like if you were playing Halo and wanted to have like a bunch of people. I remember taking my TV over to Brian Rife's house and like other people doing the same thing, and then we're just setting him up and having a huge like his living room just set up for like whatever it was, like 12, 16 of us to all play. uh so obviously we were into it and we like doing it a lot. I think now it's just so much easier that they don't even have to like work for I feel like an asshole old man saying that, but like they really don't. They just sit down in front of it and plop on and they can play forever. But I also do think you're right that it takes a certain personality because I've liked video games, but I've never been like you or like Pat. Like I could not just sit there and play a video game for hours and hours and hours. I never got into them like that. So a lot of that could just be your personality. But
Yeah. Well, I feel like you might be right. Is that personal connection is long gone? Like we just have the ability to connect people from far away now, and I think there's something lost with that. And I think a lot of people realize that when you're not right next to somebody, it's very different from being, what we're doing right now. A Zoom meeting is very different from a in-person meeting or interview or whatever. I do think that's lost, and I feel like back in the day, even with radios and TV, it was like people would have a radio or TV. Like one member of the family that was doing well off might have one. Everybody would like come over and get together to watch that. So there was like a community aspect to it. Like, only the rich person had that. Now everybody's got their own system, and it's so cheap to get that you can just do it all on its own, to the point where there's not even like local multiplayer on games anymore because it's just so convenient.
yeah, exactly. Why even bother wasting your time like making that available when no one gives a shit? I remember the last time playing a multiplayer game was at that apartment that we're going to talk about, the one by the barber shop,
Yeah.
playing must have been Call of Duty or Modern Warfare or something like that. and it was just the two of us. We were playing some like little side missions. I swear that was probably the last time I played a multiplayer game with somebody. And you know what? I had a damn good time.
Yeah, I kind of wish it was still around. I always remember the times during college with Halo where it was like we'd get a bunch of Xbox together and the setup time alone was probably like an hour and a half to get going. I mean, you get good at it, but it was like just to have that good time because it was
fun. So then you start school. We're back to the story. And you find yourself at St. James Catholic School.
Yep.
And this is a school that has nuns, which you say are very mean and irrational. It's an old school establishment. So before you started here, how important was religion in your family?
So I never really felt it. Again, I was my parents were very young when they had me. I don't think they probably saw religion as a kind of a catalyst for their parents to be strict with them. The more I'm hearing about it, the more I hear about, because I know my mom's mom was very religious, somewhat overbearing with that. Now recently hearing about my grandpa kind of being very strict and would have had those old school expectations. I think they probably saw religion as like something to rebel against. So from their perspective, they're raising me. They never pushed religion too hard on me. Probably my grandma had a little bit more so than that. I remember her trying to do Lent with me, making sure I tried to give something up during Lent for Catholic, which is where you have to give something up for right around Easter, and trying to have those moral values like imparted on me. That pressure never came from my parents at all. So the schooling was probably the main pressure I got to be religious. And my first experience was very mean, irrational nuns that I wasn't used to seeing. So I was partially raised by my grandma on my dad's side. My dad was a little bit strict, but just nothing too bad. And those nuns were my first experience with probably what I would call old school raising. So I saw them as mean and irrational. When I said that they were old school, that was actually the explanation I give, because I think that's just how everybody was back in the day to kids. And it was it was somewhat of a shock to me. So when it was like I did something wrong, I actually got the ruler smack on the wrist.
I was just going to ask that.
And probably spanked and just like screamed at. Like they were really mean. It wasn't irrational to them. That's just their lifestyle. They're very old nuns, and it was just a shock to me. And that was my first experience with religion. So that might have been why I never hooked on. I know partially because my parents were never too into it. I mean, America as a whole has shifted to non-Catholic ideals, I would say on average around the 70s and 80s, just as a whole. Like that's not just me. I mean, that's just everywhere. Atheism's a little bit more acceptable than it ever has been, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, that's why the country is collapsing.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something, Eugene?
I was going to say, so because of Lent here, because we're now into it, you couldn't give anything up for 40 days if you wanted to?
I could certainly do that. I actually was thinking about doing it, even though I'm still not very religious. As I'm raising kids, I kind of miss the community aspect and some of the moral values that were there. And I kind of want to do that. I kind of want to do it with Xander just because I had to experience it. But I do actually remember when I was young, not giving something up. And I had to argue with my grandma to not give something up. I was like, I want that wiffle ball and bat. She's like, don't you want to give that up for God? And I'm like, no, I'm good. And she made me make that choice, and she let me go through with it. But I still remember that to this day as like a moral choice. I don't know.
Guilty.
I might actually want to do that with Xander.
Yeah, it's funny. Like it's almost like it's cyclical. Like your grandparents are the religious one, because it's the same thing as it was in my family. Your grandparents are the religious one. Your parents are not, like at least not enough. Because my mom's the same way. She never has been. My grandma was. Then you become a person. I don't have kids, but as I'm getting older, well, I mean, you know me, I've never been a huge like anti-religious person. Like I have my own.
Now you're trying to push it on your dogs. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I want them to go. I mean, they go to heaven anyways, but it is funny. But then it's like now you were just like, well, I kind of might want them to have that. And it's like, and then maybe you'll raise them with religion, and then they'll grow up and have kids, and their kids will be like, well, that's stupid. Grandpa Allen is the only reason.
I think it's very true with things even outside of religion. Is raising kids is very cyclical. where you
Oh,
go
yeah.
back and forth. Very much like politics. Politics kind of go back and forth. People get a little too extreme on things, and you kind of go, there's just these waves. I think that's very true.
Yeah.
Hey, wait, all dogs
go
go
ahead,
to heaven. You should push the satanic religion on your dogs.
Oh, so they can go up there and corrupt.
If you want. I mean, they all go there, so why not?
What's your shirt say, Eugene?
Oh, Santa's helper.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
Good
Is
time
that
for
when you were bartending?
yeah. No, then I was just I was Santa's elf that day.
So, Alan, when you started Catholic school, like, did you understand there was a difference between that school and a public school?
Probably not at the time. I
Okay.
don't even think I got it once I hit public school. Like, it was just this place I had to go to and do classwork kind of thing.
Gotcha.
At some point I probably did question. I don't remember a lot of elementary school, middle school. I probably did question why I never had religion as a subject anymore. Once I did move to a public school, but I didn't really grasp it until later in life, that the whole private versus public schooling, which is, can be very, very different.
Yeah. So at St. James, you start playing baseball?
I mean, I played baseball since I was probably a baby. Like, that's how much it would have been just done around the house all the time. Like, I was hitting
Your
baseball
dad
at the
encouraged
beach when I was
that?
2.
So your dad like really encouraged it, wanted you to play baseball?
Yeah. The whole Ganska family, I think, was big into baseball. At least quite a few of us. I remember it being a big deal when one of our cousins made it to the minor leagues, and I think he wanted that. He just wanted that to be the sport, and he knew he grew up doing it, so he knew how to practice with me and to start getting good at it and things like that.
Did you play any other sports?
Yeah, I played a ton. I mean, I played pretty much everything. I played soccer at some points in time. I never really got into football, but it was any sport I could touch. It was just I always went back to baseball. Like, that was the main one.
I'm imagining high school you going out for the football team.
I was small. I might have been able to fit in some corners or cracks, but yeah, the only football I got into was flag football, which we can get into the whole like kids being like treated like in bubbles. Like, that's about all I had was flag football.
We got a lot of ground to cover, so we'll hold off on the sports rant for another time.
That's smart.
After that, you go to a different Catholic school, no nuns. What made that change? Was that just naturally, or was that a choice to send you to a different school?
Yeah, I don't recall the catalyst. I could have my guesses. Again, it's another guess. It's one of those questions I thought of when I was like filling it out. Like, I got to ask my parents about this, but it might have been just because the nuns were old and old school, like, and mean. Like, it might have been the case. It might have been financials, like, young adults raising. Maybe they were a little bit more cost effective, and I could still go to a public school.
And your dad's just like, well, I don't know. He gets beat at this one. This one, I don't know. Is it worth the extra $60 a year to send him to the one that's going to beat him?
Yeah. At about the 3rd grade, he needed that $60.
Yeah. So, eventually, I think this is probably about 95. You end up moving back in with your mother who lives in Conneaut. Do you know what happened for that to change?
Yeah, I actually asked about it because after I had Xander, I'm like, I couldn't imagine, if Hannah and I separated or something and she moved away, like having Xander, move from me. Like, if most of my family happened to be like in the area and she moved to Erie, say, I couldn't imagine like kind of separating. So I asked about it to my dad, and he mentioned that like I would actually cry like at night for my mom, and so he took that as like, okay, let's send him to the mom. I do kind of recall that happening one time. I don't think they would have made a major choice based on just like their 10-year-old crying at night, a couple times or something like that. Maybe I was doing it all the time. I don't know.
You never know. I mean, it could have just been, it might not have even been all the time. It could have just been like 2 or 3 times, but that was enough for your dad to like kind of feel maybe you were missing out on something. And I don't know what he thinks. I personally, I have that opinion that mothers are far more important than fathers. That's just me as a person who was raised by just a mother with no father. but I don't know. We'll get them on. We'll ask them about it.
Yeah. There's a question for you. I'll be watching.
um, so how did you feel about that? Like, that's got to be strange living.
I mean, during the move, I don't remember anything significant like popping up in my brain for as far as the memory goes. I just remember being okay. Now I go to a new school. This is what do you do when you're a kid? You just kind of roll with it with any kind of change.
Yeah.
I remember being strange. I remember I think I would like spend summers with my mom before that kind of thing, and just it feeling like that. But then it just kept going, and I'm just like, when am I going back? I think I like might have asked that, like, and it was just like, no, you live here now.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay.
Try to make some friends.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do remember like the part of the problem was like I went from all those cousins and everybody growing around there to I did have cousins in Conneaut. We did have family around here to like one. So it was like it was jarring. And when I went to school, I didn't have anybody there that I knew. So it was, I think that's shocking for any kid, a kind of move where you got to make new friends. But I hadn't built that skill set to make new friends. And I still honestly really don't have it to this day. So it was jarring.
Yeah. And, unfortunately the one cousin you have, he's, kind of not that great, which I feel like this is a good time to mention that Alan's cousin is actually married to Eugene's sister.
Yeah.
So that's fun.
In the long term, like I know we make fun of him. I think he's a pretty good dude.
No, I'm sure he is. I have I don't really have any strong feelings about him. I've actually, every time I would run into him, like back before I moved, it was always a really nice thing. Just stopping and hanging out. Hey, how things going? I mean, he's fine. Yeah. We always gave him shit, and it's hard to break that. So then after this, over time, you start to feel like your baseball skills are degrading. And your love of video games is also rising. I'm sure those don't have anything to do with each other. And then I'm trying to bring this up in a delicate way, but your dad ends up spending some time in jail.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All those things aren't really related. The video games and baseball degrading probably are related. The timeline that I sent you is a little off base. Yeah. I was already into video games since the Super Nintendo. Really into baseball. I thought I was going to be a baseball player all through like even early middle school. That was my career. If I had to write down a career choice, I was putting baseball player. Like I remember doing that in TAPS class in 6th grade. So I never
real quick. I just want to say that's something like I learned something about you because I knew that you were into baseball and you like playing and everything. I had no idea you were so serious about it that like you thought you were going to be a professional baseball player.
Yeah.
So that was kind of surprising, especially because by the time I met you, you really weren't like having anything to do with it. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's yeah. And we can probably get into it later, but it was probably like an anti thing. Like I was really good at baseball. Like I practiced baseball. I lived and breathed it. I was a pitcher, a third baseman. Some of the, you got to be a hard thrower. You got to be knowing what you're doing for those positions. You're kind of a key player. To just loving it to starting to not be good at it over time. So this is throughout middle school. The video games I still loved, but they took up probably more of my time as I kind of grew up, rather than like going outside and practicing. And then like I practiced a lot with my dad. So when I moved in with my mom, some of that practice time probably went away. So I remember explaining this to our other buddy, Pat, at some point in time. It just felt like everybody else was getting better and I was kind of staying the same, to the point where I couldn't deal with not being the best. Like I was so used to being in every all-star game, being very important to the team, to being stuck out in right field, which if anybody that plays baseball knows, like you don't want to be the right field player. That's where they stick the trash essentially. So I couldn't deal with that.
That's where Matt would go.
And yeah, I apologize for all right field players out there. It is still important, but it's just boring. It's not something I was used to. And if I'd started baseball middle age, I would have been used to that. But I realize now as I'm older, I just couldn't deal with that adjustment, that degradation where I wasn't like one of the best players. So I ended up quitting, and probably video games it is related. That probably kind of took over, I guess,
Yeah.
as like my hobby, the thing that I spent time on. I don't think it was like directly related to it. It's like the cause of it or anything like that. I just think it ended up taking more of my time. Baseball took less of my time to the point where I got out of it.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if that answered your original question, but
It's fine. I don't remember what it was. But yeah, that's got to be really hard for a not even a teenager yet to have to deal with seeing their like being that person, and then like you're not mentally mature enough to deal with that situation that you just talked about. You know what I mean? So I feel like it had to have had a big effect on you, like
yeah.
overall. So yeah, that's rough. Um, sorry. So what happened with your dad?
Oh yeah. That's the original question. So my dad was a big drinker growing up. I honestly didn't see it too much. I think even though he was a big drinker, he kept it from me very, very well. And I didn't find out about all this, or I found out about the jail thing a little bit after it kind of happened. But I believe he either got like a couple DUIs, or probably got into like a bar fight at some point and hit somebody too hard or something like that. I don't know the exact details. So I was pretty young. I remember not seeing my dad for a while. I can't remember the time frame. I think it was like over a summer when I was kind of doing the reverse. I was visiting my grandma instead of my mom because I was now living with my mom. I believe that was the case. And he just would interact via phone calls. And I was just like, okay, this is weird. Didn't quite understand it. And he, at some point, I had to go visit him at a building. And it was just really weird. I just remember being kind of excited to see him because I hadn't seen him in a while. And it was a halfway house after jail that he had to go into.
Oh wow!
And he kind of sat me down. I remember playing ping pong because they had ping pong tables, and he was just killing it. Like he was just crushing me at ping pong because that's probably all he had to do over there. And he sat me down and he just explained, "Hey, I have a drinking problem. It led me to be in jail. It's not good. This is a genetic problem. You have the potential to have this issue. I just want you to know about it." And he kind of sat me down in a real dad moment, real family moment, and just kind of explained this to me. And it was weird to absorb at a young age, but I appreciate how he did it. I appreciate that he didn't just keep it from me, and to hear about later kind of thing, like a lot of some of this other stuff I hear about. But it was just this thing that occurred to him, and I feel like as far as he handled it with his relationship with me, it was really good. But I took that to heart. Like I still worry about just the potential of drinking too much and stuff like that. And I always think back to that conversation because it is very much genetic. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, like when I was reading it in your book, like I thought maybe that had something to do with you moving, but that didn't have anything to do with it. Like you moving in with your mom.
Memory's very, very poor. But
Gotcha.
it could have. But I seem to recall that I moved before that all happened. Like that
Gotcha.
happening maybe a year or two later. But
Okay.
yeah, it's another question I'll ask you at dinner later.
Yeah. So I just you had made a comment in there about how you moved 4 different times in a couple of years after you lived with your mom. And I went through the same thing. And I remember reading an article from this guy and he was talking about like, that's something that happens when you don't have a lot of money or you're poor or like you're poor with money, bad with money, which usually go hand in hand to be perfectly honest. So it just made me laugh because like that really is a perfect example of like not having money. Like that's that's probably why you moved around a lot.
Yeah, maybe. As far as I can remember, it wasn't all the time, but my mom had multiple jobs to get us through some tough times. So she was very much the at least partially single mom that had multiple jobs just to scrape by. So I never really thought about it too much. I do remember it just being annoying every time we had to do it. Thinking back now, it's like I don't have a super strong attachment to having a home. Like if we were to move out, it would just be like another thing, like going into a new home where I don't like. I have a lot of memories here, but it's just like wood and nails to me sometimes.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I
and
would
I
have
feel like
thought that house would have been different. I thought you'd have some sort of attachment.
it's definitely different for this one. I am glad that I actually I bought my parents' house. For those that don't know, I this is as close to a home as I had before since I lived in Erie, which was
Yeah.
a house on Zimmerman Road in Erie. But there was like that was during my developmental years, was that moving around a bunch. I never felt even a strong attachment to this house that I think a lot of people would growing up. I don't know how you feel about your Poplar Street house growing up there.
Poplar Street is that one house that I can't get over, and I would love, because that was the house we lived there. You know, all of my like teenage years. It was the longest place that we ever lived. You know, it was probably like 11, 12 years or something like that. I think about that house all the time, but I've kind of had that same thing still, even as an adult, is that I just haven't been able to get attached to anywhere that I've lived. I've never lived anywhere where I thought like, oh, this is my house. Even this house that is partly my house, I still cannot like accept that, and I just feel like, oh, we're just here. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's very strange, and I'm sure that growing up like that has a lot to do with it. And by the way, I'm not saying any of that as an insult to Alan's mom or like my mom. It's like it was tough. You know, when you're a single mother trying to take care of kids and you're busting your ass all the time, it's very hard to do anything. So yeah, I just want to clear that up. I'm not being rude.
Yeah, no, they're beautiful people. Like my mom, like she was a single mom that had multiple jobs to get by, and you know she probably had to make some tough choices at the time. And I don't think it was like bad developmentally. It's just it's something I'm not at right now. And I do think like even for Xander, it's like I kind of want him to have that, but I didn't turn out that bad, so it's like I don't know. It's not that important to me, and I definitely don't. Like my mom was awesome raising me, so I don't besmirch her.
Yeah, you take all the negative thoughts that you could have, and you just start out. You're just like, you know what? She might have done this. She might have done that. But all these other things she did right and so well. And look where I'm at right now. What do I have to complain about? You know?
Yeah, I think it's very easy, especially people that don't have kids, to just shit on other parents for like every wrong decision that they make. And it's like there's such a spectrum like to raising a child, and you're gonna have bad moments, you're gonna have good. If it's all good, I honestly think that's bad. In a certain sense. So it's like, yeah, you just people are shitty. People like to bring other people down a lot of times.
They do, yeah. And me personally, that's one of the big reasons why I didn't want to have kids, was because I know whatever happens, it's gonna, like, if something doesn't go well, it's gonna tear me apart. You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna blame myself for every bad thing that ever happens. And I know it's not, you know, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. We'll talk about kids. And so we get to middle school, which you said you don't remember much of. That's fine. Which I was thinking about, and I have to imagine that's probably because your middle school, up until you started really making friends, was probably just like playing video games and doing work. You know, I mean, well, you had friends at West Main, though, right?
Yeah, I actually do. I remember having Scott Pearson, who ended up being a good friend in high school, our part of our clique, kind of thing. I knew people. I remember West Main better than I remember Rao Middle School, which is really strange. My first 2 years there, and then Rao ended up being not a lot of memories. And I don't. There's something there that I never got to go to a psychologist to figure out. But
you were molested like every morning.
That's a joke I can laugh at, not a lot of other people.
Yeah, that was terrible. Sorry. That's just, you know.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was that. And then, but yeah, it's strange. But I remember Brian Reif being friends in middle school a little bit. I remember us kind of knowing each other in middle school, and probably even having a class together. But I don't remember the classes that well. I don't. It's very strange.
Yeah, I don't remember you in middle school. I remember we had a mutual friend, Mr. Butts.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of how we knew each other, and thank goodness we kind of got over that connection. and we formed our own.
I could have wrote a whole chapter on that. That's
oh yeah. We won't talk about it. Yeah.
The story of Alan and Kane.
Go ahead.
You talking about? Huh?
What were you saying, Eugene?
I said the story of Alan and Cain.
I don't want to talk about other people on the show like that.
Well, no, we don't have to talk about it negatively. I'm just saying,
Cain and Abel, Cain and Alan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cain was an interesting individual. I'll just put it that way.
He had a personality. I'll give him
He
that.
did. I was good friends with him for a long time. Like, I mean, probably before you came around, he was one of my best friends. So I spent a lot of time with him.
Oh, I remember like going by on a bike and just being like, "Who's this fucking guy hanging out with my friend?"
So we get to middle school. Don't remember much of that. And when did you decide to quit baseball entirely?
So I know it was by high school. Again, Rao, I didn't remember a ton, but it was thoroughly by like sixth grade. I remember that career choice where I was still fully into baseball. So seventh, eighth grade would have been the where I just didn't feel like it was doing good. I do remember having this like shitty baseball coach. I don't remember his name, but he like promoted people to cheat, and he was really negative, and he'd make fun of the kids that weren't very good. And like at the start, I was good enough to probably get by, and then I ended up in the lump somewhere, stuck in right field kind of stuff. I remember him being a negative influence. So by eighth grade, and certainly by high school, I was out, and I remember that being like a tough choice. I remember the thought in my brain is like, I have to tell my dad this is gonna be tough, that I want to quit. Like I had to go through him
he's gonna start drinking again.
What's that?
He's gonna start drinking again, and it's gonna be my fault because I don't want to play baseball anymore.
Yeah, like I didn't know about all that, but yeah, I remember it being a big deal to talk about it because baseball was big when we were growing up.
So how did he react when you told him?
I think if I recall, he just asked why. It was one of those other situations. They let me make the choice. It wasn't like you're going to do this kind of stuff, but he was just curious, like what was going on. And he's like, are you sure you want to do this kind of thing? You've been doing it for a long time. And they kind of treated me like, he treated me like an adult in that situation where it was just like, okay, he probably said like, I might regret it later kind of thing. And I kind of do. It was a weird situation.
Yeah. So in high school, early in high school, you encounter a brilliant young man who will eventually change your life, and you become very close friends with him. What do you think it was that made us become such good friends, Alan?
Yeah, I don't know. I did write a note that we realized a long time ago that like our whole group of friends, I think aside from Adam, had separated parents, and there's something
parents,
to that.
That's his dad is that's his stepdad.
Oh, okay, so even him, kind of had, So maybe it was like everybody but him had single parents kind of thing. Something like that.
Yeah.
So even then, there's something there. But I remember there was a life planning class, which I don't remember learning much about life in that class. But you had a joke about, I think, having sex with a dead body at a morgue, and it was. I remember that being one of the first memories I have where I just broke up laughing because it was like, there's something to humor where like you push boundaries on it, and everybody kind of had this like nice friendly circle. Like, well, like you can joke about this, you can joke about that. You push the boundaries on that, and then I laughed so hard I realized I wanted to push the boundaries on humor, and I thought it was hilarious. I thought you were hilarious, and I think we probably had a similar sense of humor. And maybe that's related to all that stuff. Maybe we're a little bit darker. Maybe I don't know. But
that is so funny because honestly, when I was writing these questions out and I was looking at the group of friends that we had, and I was thinking of that group and what made it so much different. Honestly, the number one thing I was thinking was we all just had darker senses of humor than everybody else did, and I think that was what like led us all to kind of like becoming the friends that we were, because we were a very mixed group of friends. Like there was some football players. We had some. I was the poor kid. It's just you were the smart kid. We all had different backgrounds and everything, but then we had like that one little thing that sort of. I think that probably is it. Is that the humor is what made us all such good friends.
Yeah, well, we talked about it in the last podcast. Is there's a certain mind to be creative, and a lot of creative people have like messed up minds, but like you might be like attracted to other people that have dealt with similar. I don't want to say trauma. Like it's just different. You know, I never felt like I was a victim or anything growing up, like you know, having separated parents or anything like that. So I don't. But there's something there where, you know, yeah, comedically we were all in sync. That's for dang sure.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll get more to the rest of the friends. You know, I'm just the most important one. Oh, by the way, what was that, Eugene?
I was like, man, I thought that was a setup where he was going to tell me a story about Zach Johnson.
No. Zach's a good guy.
I like Zach.
So, by the way, I think the class that we really became friends in was tech drawing. Like, I think that was our 9th grade tech drawing. We sat next to each other, and I think that was really kind of when we started being friends. So we'll get to, because I have some more memories about that, but they tie into this. The same year that we become friends, this is the same year that Dave meets your mom.
Yeah, I want to say it was a year later. That the timeline I gave you was probably a little bit off.
Okay.
I think it was sophomore, junior year, one of those two. But yeah, it was high school time. Yep. And that was that was good. That was good. Dave was the first good boyfriend my mom had, and I know I think she's watching, so I say that with a lot of love because I love Dave a lot, and entering our life was just a good moment. Like yeah.
Definitely. So were you happy right off the bat, or were you kind of resentful a little bit?
No, skeptical, 100%. I didn't know this guy. I didn't know, who he was. I knew my mom did say, I think at one point, or maybe Dave told me later, he was super nervous to meet me and stuff like that. So I was just like, who's this? Who's this dude? Who's he? And I think
he's a fucking cop too. He's now a reformed police officer, so
I don't know what that means, but
it's all right. I'm sure I'll hear about it when he eventually. No, I'm gonna get a message from after to be like, "Man, I don't think I'm gonna do your show." I don't.
I think he's gonna have a list of questions for you at his interview.
I think so.
But yeah, I remember him being super nerd. I was super skeptical. I think every kid that has the mom's boyfriend situation is just always starts out skeptical. Like, there was one boyfriend that she had. I won't go into too many details. He wasn't like a positive male influence, he, just one of those relationships that, that might've made her happy. And it was actually during her biker gang times where she was in a biker gang. And a lot of people might look down on that. I think the biker gang, very similar to religion, I think had a beautiful like community aspect. Like we got together all the time. We were always like getting together with other kids. But he wasn't a good male influence. Dave was. So it's the ex-boyfriend wasn't all that great for me, but Dave definitely was. And after the first time meeting him, like he had, I think did some research. Like he knew I was into video games. He was rather young. At the time he was still playing video games, but I remember him like setting up the PlayStation for me. He had some cool games, like he had Silent Hill, and I'm just like, oh, okay, all right. So we got to like relate to that and kind of build a relationship on that. So and Dave's he's a stand-up guy. Like it really just didn't take time to realize like, okay, I can trust this guy. He's good.
Yeah, well, that's good. Sorry, we had a little snafu with apparently the chat is not working, but that's okay. We don't need it to have a good time. I just got to get back to my stuff being set up.
Well, funny story with Dave, if you haven't, this is probably around the same time where he used to play basketball with my dad. A few of the other police officers would play basketballs on like Sunday nights. And I bet that Dave couldn't do the splits.
Really? I didn't hear about this.
Yeah.
So tell your story, Eugene. Did he do the splits?
No, I'm just saying. I lost the bet to Dave that he could do the splits. He can do the splits.
So he did the splits.
Wow. Yes.
All right. That's impressive. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, he was
I
more.
don't think you could probably do it now, but then.
I'm still
We'll
gonna
find
have.
out.
Yeah.
um, so a little bit later in high school, you start to notice like some depression, long-term depression. You said, uh, do you know like what caused this, or
No, no, no. That's another thing that would probably take like a bunch of therapy sessions to figure out. I like before that. I remember. I think it was just normal. I'd get sad every once in a while, happy once in a while. I remember it started. I think it was 11th grade where there was just long periods of time where I didn't want to talk to people,
Mhm.
and yeah, I just remember it like setting in more, and it never like fully went away. It's always kind of in the back of my mind. Depression, anxiety is kind of a thing. More recently, I'm realizing that a lot of people can kind of latch onto those kind of labels and use it as an excuse to not do things. So I think there was an aspect of that. I couldn't say there's any one thing that kind of built that depression. I mean, there's just like things leading up where I remember being very, very happy when I was very young, around a lot of good stuff going on. Um, I think if you keep kids active, like this is what I'm trying to like crystallize it for Xander's sake, is if you can keep your kids in activities, if you can keep them busy to where they can't even think about it, they're always around positive influences, stuff like that. They don't have the chance. So I was kind of out of baseball. I didn't like pick up any other activities aside from video games, and I think it was allowed to set in a little bit more solidly. I don't know. I haven't fully figured it out.
Yeah, I
I
got
think a
you. I
lot of
mean,
kids just kind of go through that phase too, but it never really. It definitely was a really extreme phase, but it never really went away at all.
yeah. Did you ever talk to your parents about it?
No, I was pretty clammy when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Uh, I have a specific memory where my mom wanted me to write into a journal like what was wrong, like trying to communicate me, trying to come up with creative ideas to create to talk with me.
Mhm.
And then she's like, write down what's wrong. We'll talk about it later. And she's like, write down how you feel. And in the journal, I wrote down, I don't feel like talking. And that really pissed her off. And I just remember not communicating a lot about private stuff. Like, I don't know if there's like a shame there. Like I didn't want to burden, I don't know, or just like I felt like less good. There's something there, but it's probably related to the depression.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm picturing your mom like doing everything she can to be like the perfect mom, like what a mom should do. And then she just gets finished. She's like, "You fucking asshole! Just tell me how you feel."
Yeah, kids are a-holes sometimes, and
Oh, definitely.
tough.
I have in my mind like the few times that I pushed my mom over the edge, because that's like you don't forget those moments, especially when like your parents aren't that way. Like I remember her and I'm just like, I went too far. I don't know how to take this back.
Yeah, you can't sometimes.
Yeah. So this is the same time you Dave and your mom find the house on Bell Street. Or around there. I mean, I'm going through the timeline. All this stuff happened in your life at some point, so we'll just go through and follow that. They get the house on Bell Street. You guys go in, you completely gut the place, remodel it. You make a home for the three of you, and as you said earlier, like this is the first home that you've had, like home that you've had since Erie. Uh, so how did that, I mean, I guess you kind of already answered this, but like, how did that feel? Like, you actually helped to create this home for you guys, and it's actually yours now.
No, I mean, that's a fair question. I would say like now looking back on it, it was a really, really positive, good thing to have to like build up a house and you kind of get a pride from it. Pride from succeeding at something. I didn't feel that at the time, or I didn't recognize it at the time. Like once a project was fully complete, it was just like, oh, our house looks nice or whatever. I want to go, play with friends or video games or something like that. I don't care. But it's like one of those, it's just a really good thing. Just if I didn't have baseball as an extracurricular activity or something like that, that was another positive thing. Like anybody should do with their kids is just remodel a house. Like that's it takes a long time. It's delayed gratification. And once it happens, you have this like fully nice thing. to look at afterwards. And it was just a really positive thing. And I think about that when I think about Xander. Didn't realize it at all the time. At the time, I was just like, fuck, I got to do more work, you know? Like, God damn it.
I want to go hang out with my friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I remember going over there and seeing the house, like when you guys were in the middle of remodeling it, and even before you got started. And yeah, you guys did a lot of work. It's a beautiful house now. Also, when you first moved in, did you know that someone had killed themselves inside of that house?
I can't remember. It was probably late. I think after a year or two. I don't think immediately they had told me that, but it eventually got out, and it became like a joke among all of us, which is terrible to joke about. But
we went to school with a person. It was her uncle that did it or something.
Oh no shit! Is that how we found out? Maybe
I think so. Yeah.
Because I would think it'd be one of those things they wouldn't actually want to tell me, but I do remember finding out. But that could have been the catalyst for sure.
Yeah. So do you you also started working sorry, I'm looking through my notes. You burned down a trailer.
Yeah.
For no goddamn reason.
Yeah, that's not what I put in there, but
you were not with your good group of friends at this point. I just want to point out.
Yeah, no, this was an ancillary group of friends, 3 of us, and I remember one of them, they I think they had rough childhoods, and they 2 of them hated this child. They're actually twins. They hated this place, I think, because they grew up in a kind of a shitty place, and I think they had asshole parents and stuff like that. They wanted to trash it, so they came up to Golden Dawn when I was working there, and they're like, "Hey, you want to trash this trailer?" I'm like, "Heck yeah, let's do this after I get out of work." And I think I tried to after work we met up there, squirting mustard all over the place, doing all kinds of stuff, writing shitty things on the wall that we expected shitty teenagers to write, essentially. And
you spelled that. That's spelled right. You got to change a couple letters there. Like you're writing graffiti on the wall, and it's just like, oh no, we can't do it right. It's got to be. Never mind. It was a bad joke. Sorry.
I like your failed jokes a lot, but we ended up having a lighter, and we flipped the couch over as like a big ruin the place thing. We lit the bottom of it on fire with the full expectation that we could put it out very quickly. Yeah, so Eugene knows, probably because he's burned a few couches in his backyard or something like that. But that stuff goes up quick, and it was
burned a few trailers down in his day too. So,
so yeah, that was that thing went up very quick. We did try to put it out, and it was very quick before the smoke just filled up the place. You couldn't breathe, and I'm surprised. Like, I'm not scared of fires to this day, because it was just intense how fast it happened. Very intense.
Yeah. I do want to add that this totally fucked up Dave's advancement in the police force.
He's got to take some personal responsibility on that one. You just got to push harder.
Wasn't he like on his way to go like get an interview to be detective or something like that? And then you did that, and it just
I don't know if they canceled the interview. They might have went through with it still, but like it was like fully recognized that he wasn't getting the position. Kind of thing.
Oh, see, I might not have understood. I thought he just like didn't go to the interview because he went to deal with you. And
maybe.
I don't know, but I could be wrong.
He does tell the story a lot, but yeah, it's just something to ask him in the podcast.
Oh, definitely. So, how much do you resent Alan for?
I just imagine like he's sitting at the police department, and like the higher ups are like, look, you can, there's going to be repercussions if you take blame for this, or we can just cancel your advancement in your career and we'll just sweep it under the rug.
Oh, yeah. Well, it didn't. Although, well, I didn't get in a ton of trouble. It ended up being like 25 hours of community service. It was like, that's one of those things, like, because I'm white, I did not get a lot of bad stuff.
I thought you were going to say, that's one of those things, if I would have known I was only going to get 25 hours, I would have burned down a lot more trailers.
Jesus. Oh, no. Yeah, that was bad.
Real quick, I got to ask, you got your job at Golden Dawn. Your mom was at the interview with you?
Yeah, as I was filling out the timeline, I was like, that memory kind of popped in my brain. And this is totally like like she wanted to make sure I got this position. She wanted to, I think, make sure I didn't say anything stupid, or at least help me along, because she knew I was a nervous kid, that I just wouldn't have been able to I guess do it myself. But she used to work at Golden Dawn. That was one of her multiple jobs at once that she used to have. Like she worked at the hospital in Golden Dawn to scrape by. And I think because she used to work there, she got me the interview. And I don't know if she was there, but she was like, she at least dropped me off into the room just to help me out. Like I wouldn't have got the job without her, essentially. And it was one of those things that she really wanted to make sure I got a job, and probably should have let me like try to do it on my own, but I probably wouldn't have got the job if I did it on my own, kind of thing. I don't know. It was weird.
Yeah. Well, hey, so she was taking responsibility for not pushing you to be a social butterfly, and so she's like, all right, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna help him out. It's fine. She did the right thing.
Yeah, Golden Dawn was good.
Yeah, I remember you stealing us subs once in a while. It was pretty nice.
Yeah, I did steal a sub one time.
Just once.
I remember walking right out. That was like really dumb, because it's like you can lose a job just for over a sub, but it was hilarious.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask before we get out of high school, do you have a particular memory or anything that really sticks out that involves your, like, that core group of friends?
You're talking about the core high school group of friends? Yeah, they were. I do remember one time. I think it was like storming out, and there was a group of us at Brian Reif's house, and we were kind of bored inside. And this might have actually been later on in high school, but I think it might have been at the end of high school. And it was just downpouring, like cats and dogs. And one of somebody just like, let's go outside and play in the rain. And we just we took off our socks and shoes and probably shirts, and just started stomping in puddles down Conneaut, down like that old mill road towards Rao or whatever. And just started like stomping it. We're making jokes like, oh, we're going to step in heroin needles because it's Conneaut. But it was just this really pure moment of childhood joy that we carried over to high school. And I think that's quintessential. Like, you have to be really comfortable with a group of friends to kind of do something like that, and just have something like that come up, and then everybody just be like, go for it.
Yeah,
like, it was cool.
Definitely. I think I remember the most like sled riding and bumper sledding, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, we got up to 55 miles per hour. One of us could have died.
Yeah, going down what's that? Yeah. and you get going and you realize, like, this isn't even ice anymore. We're on fucking concrete.
Yeah. We got going fast. We were so lucky. Like, we got caught quite a bit, but we were so lucky we didn't get caught in some of the stuff.
I think Dave being a cop did kind of help us out of a couple situations.
Yeah, I think I had like 12 times I got pulled over. And I only got the one ticket because I went through a stop sign, and like the cop, I could have hit the cop if that was like a little bit later.
We were leaving Tinker's Hollow.
Yep. I remember.
We'd seen something that creeped us out, and you flew through that stop sign, and the cop was like coming up too, and he's like, I wish I could let you go, but you were just too close, buddy. And you're like, oh, it's fun,
Oh, I completely understood that one. I understood if the 6 before that gave me a ticket as well, so I abused that situation.
So 2003, you graduate, go to Kent State Ashtabula. I eventually make my way there, and this is when we encounter Pat, who becomes the third member of Team AMP. We had already established the name, so thankfully a P came along. I should also add, this is also when we met Eugene pretty much and started hanging out with him. Mm-hmm. Do you have any idea how Pat ended up being such a good friend? Because I feel like he kind of weaseled his way into our friendship.
Well, we did the interviews for all the people that their name started with P at the time, because we were trying to fill that position. But aside from that, I don't remember how it started. I just remembered he was there, to the point where I thought he was in memories from before college that he wasn't actually in. Like, he was just there. Like, it might even be like one of those Mandela effects where he came from an alternate universe where he was now our friend and came to this universe. Like, it was very strange, because I don't remember any kind of catalyst like with our friendship.
No, he was just
ended up-
there one day.
Yeah.
You know what happened? We were probably like talking about going to get, like, he happened to just be sitting with us, and he offered to buy lunch, and that's what happened. That's what started it all.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Yep, he tipped a bunch of money, and yeah.
What's strange about Pat was the first time I went over his house, I was like, I used to hang out in this house because I had a friend that lived there before, and so I was like, this is so surreal. Like, I know the layout of this house. Let's go hang out.
Oh, that's interesting. So after
Eugene, when did you start hanging out with Pat? Was that college, or were you friends with him in high school and all that?
It was college.
Okay, all right. Yeah, see, that supports the theory that he just came from another universe. Like, nobody really knew him in high school that much.
Oh, how weird!
Like I said, I used to go to that house before he moved in there, and then all of a sudden, like, my buddy moved away, and I had to the house, and like, see, I want to say it was probably 98 was probably the last time I was in that house, and the next thing you know, 2004, I'm going back over there again.
Some things are adding up here where their family may have murdered your friends.
I apologize. I wasn't listening that close because I saw the chat had started working. I'm just gonna go ahead and fill in my mind what you guys are talking about. I assume Pat's dad murdered somebody. So
yeah.
Okay. Eventually, you go to Kent, Maine. You start living in a dorm. I have to imagine that was very difficult.
Yeah. I kind of joked about it earlier, like that lack of ability to make friends. Obviously, I did make friends in Conneaut High School, but it almost felt like a similar situation when I was young. Now, I should have been much better off. I'd grown up, went through high school, was able to make friends there. I did not. I struggled to make friends in college. Now, the whole not being a part of like extracurricular groups, not being in sporting, certainly helped with that. It was like a pure focus on schooling, and then I'd play video games on my free time. I did make one good friend in college, Becca, which you guys know and love.
My ex-girlfriend.
Oh, we're talking about Mountain Girl?
Yeah. She's from Montana. She was a shot putter.
She'd fuck all of us up if she wanted to. I remember you brought her home. You brought her to Conneaut for a weekend, but you were too afraid to ask your parents if she could stay. So she stayed at my house with me. And I remember my mom being super pissed. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's really funny.
Yeah, that's when I lived on Poplar.
When I had the apartment. But that's really interesting.
Oh, yeah, that's a different story.
Yeah,
we don't talk about that one. But yeah, I remember her, and like we're just hanging out in my room, and I barely knew her, and she barely knew me, but it was fine.
That's I don't know. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I do want to add, I came and stayed with you for like a week when you were at Kent in the dorm because you had the room by yourself, so I just came and stayed, and a lot of fun.
Yeah. You guys filled the gaps for me because I don't think I would have made it if you guys weren't like visiting every few weeks.
Yeah, we came down a lot. Remember when Pat threw his tire, like his flat tire, into the bushes, and we got back. It says like, "Where's the fucking rim? I need the fucking rim."
Yeah, I think he called me up and he's like, "Can you check that bush? I need to get it back," and it was gone. So he probably got in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, stupid.
Why did we do that? He had his tire went flat. We replaced it. And we just threw it. Or?
I think because we were heading back. We were picking you up.
Yeah.
And you had a bunch of shit with you. It might have been like an end of the semester thing or something. And so we took you, and we didn't have room for the flat tire. And I think we were all too stupid to think like, oh, you need the rim. Like that's not something you just go and buy. So we tossed it in the bush, and it was gone forever.
Well, it's just an off-the-cuff joke on our part without thinking it all the way through, essentially.
Yeah, kinda. Yeah, there was a lot of those.
Yep.
So you eventually graduate in psychology, and this is when you have some life advice for the viewers.
Yeah. No, if I could go back in time, and I can't even say I would listen to myself when I was younger because I very much got raised in a situation where it's like you can be whatever you want to be. kind of positive mentality, focus on what you want. I ended up enjoying psychology as a class very much. It helped me kind of understand some of the stuff I was going through. It felt like, and I was just like, and I was almost like I was still a little bit rebellious to the point where like I was nerdy, so everybody thought I was going to be like some kind of computer science major, and I was like, I'm not going to do that because every fuck thinks that I'm going to do that. And going back in time, it's like I was good at computers. Like I should have done that or accounting. And I did have a math minor that I didn't really use, but just because I enjoyed psychology as a class doesn't mean as a career it was a good choice. And it wasn't. Like it was a poor choice. It wasn't bad that I graduated with a bachelor's degree. That helps even if you do something else. Like it's a good resume pattern. But psychology was not my jam later in life. That's for sure.
Yeah. So you learn how not equipped for psychology you are, how for psychology you are when you get a job at the community counseling center. And did you hate it or were you just bad at it?
I think well, straight out of college, I mean, it was similar to like your first job. Is you're pretty much bad at whatever first job you have. Like it's a very uh, a weird thing because if you have a good boss, if you have good like either mentors or good trainers, like you'll get there. But I was not my skill set as far as like social skills was. It was not a good fit for me, and I wasn't good at the job. And the big problem was I never got good at it. Like I did gain some skills. I did get better at interacting with clients and recognizing like conflict management and de-escalating, but I was like subpar at best compared to others. And it plateaued. Like I never got really good at it to the point where I did end up miserable. When I first got the job, super excited, really, really worried that I wouldn't be able to get a job. That's like when everybody was like, people are getting college degree. They started realizing it doesn't guarantee your dream job just having a degree. You got to put the work into it. Super stoked I had it. Super excited. My first probably 6 months, 8 months, but I never blossomed, as it were. Like a young kid, you have a lot of motivation. You have a lot of energy to move up, and that never equated to me getting better at that job.
We should also add, though, that job is very hard.
Oh my god,
Every
yeah.
single person I know who's done it, you've done it. My mom did it for several years. I know a couple other people who are in the same field. You get burnt out so quickly because it's such a difficult, like just having to deal with that kind of stuff that really I think you have to be just as passionate as a person can be about something like that in order to actually blossom with it as a career.
Yeah, I would almost say like for your own mental health, you would want to almost separate yourself from it. But I don't think you could succeed if you
Yeah.
didn't empathize like crazy. So it takes such a special person to do something like
Yeah.
that. And I have
Or
the
maybe
utmost respect.
a pure sociopath could be fine in that job, but
Yeah, yeah, one or two.
yeah. Uh, you also said something about wanting to join the Peace Corps. Was this before you started working at the counseling center or after?
I was before. So the Peace Corps, you need a bachelor's degree to join. And it
Mhm.
was like, it's kind of before I realized I really loved traveling, but I just wanted to do something positive for the world at the time. At least that was what was in my head. And
Yeah.
community counseling center actually would have been the reason I didn't. That would have been like a major choice in life. I was still looking for a job. I was applying for the Peace Corps. Some stuff had come back. I was lazy at the time, where I didn't put the work in that I should have to actually join it. Otherwise, I could actually did the full processing, went off to the Peace Corps. I never really went balls to the wall like into it to the point where I could have done that. And then I got the community counseling job after interviewing, and I was like, okay, like now in my mind, I considered myself lucky to find a job. I'm not going to go away for the Peace Corps for 2 years because I got a job in my field. Like that's something I'm going to start. But I could have done it if I applied myself. I wish I had. I feel like it would have been. I talk about my timeline. Like I don't think I was fully grown up until I actually got out and got a job in factory later.
Mhm.
Peace Corps would have kind of forced me to grow up as well. There's certain situations I think in life as you become an adult that force you to grow up, and that would have been one of them that kind of did it. It would have been rough, and I think it would have came out with a better for it though.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think adulthood and growing up is something you. it takes a while to get there. Anybody who expects anybody to be an adult right out of high school or even right after college is expecting a lot, uh, especially for our time. Maybe 100 years ago, it wasn't get a fucking job when you're 12.
Yeah, yeah, or you're kicked out. Like, well, that's
Yeah.
they used to force you to do that earlier in age, and I don't know how they dealt with it because there was not like the mental health stuff that we have now, and I just feel like people just starved to death back in the day because like you had a job or you were just dying. I feel like, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
that and it's just that and people just did their jobs. It's like yeah, these guys went and were miserable. They beat their wives. That's how they got through it, Alan.
Yeah, you're
They
right.
beat their wives and their kids.
Thanks for clarifying.
We're progressing now. There's no excuse to beat your wife and kids.
Yep.
Uh, so during this time, you are living in that apartment that I'd mentioned earlier. It's behind the barber shop. Lots of great memories from that place. Lots of bad memories too. I feel like there were moments that really tested your friendships. Like for example, Pat snapping your phone in half for no reason, and and the time that we kicked your door in after you
Yeah.
had ditched us at the bar and you called the cops on us.
Yeah.
Still friends though.
Yeah. I think with any kind of friendship and like when you're older, it's really easy to look back on it. At the time, like it really did like, do I have good friends that would do this? And I think that's kind of an immature way to look at it.
Well,
Is we were close, we were like family. You have really, really good and bad times with your family. And I don't, I never distanced myself from you guys aside from physically going to Kent, Maine. It's just it was like god damn, those are some shitty things. And I feel like if I was like more of an assertive person, somebody that confronted people more, like I would have handled that much different, like got a lot more angry. I didn't like having to get angry or argue with people. So like the calling the cops was just a terrible choice. It's not something you do on your friends kind of thing. Neither is kicking down a door, but that was my way of dealing with it without dealing with it kind of thing.
Yeah, we were all drunk and stupid at the time too, so it's
well,
there was a lot of drinking, a lot of partying, lots of
and that cracking the phone in half is very similar to the tire stories. Like it's ridiculous, it's funny to just break a phone for no reason. It's an off the cuff joke that actually cost like we were all barely scraping by. Like it was like I had my own apartment. And it was like that represented a lot of my income.
Yeah.
So it obviously pissed me off. But super hilarious. Like just like it was just an off the cuff joke that if we thought about it, we could have joked about something else instead. But it was
it's you do when you have like a close group of friends for that long, you're gonna do shit that pisses each other off at some point. And you weren't in the wrong for calling the cops. I fucking would have done the same thing. But I can think of shit that you guys did that just like I remember just being like, are these guys my friends? Like they're being so fucking mean right now. So it happens. And I'm sure Pat has had the same exact thought about us. Like, why are they being assholes to me?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So then at some point you find out that you have a half sister that you were never aware of. How did that come about? I mean, you finding out, not her being birthed.
Yeah, I don't know that second question, but the first one, when I was at that apartment, I remember my mom coming over and knocking on the door, which is I would say is strange. Like I automatically assumed somebody was dying because that's kind of our, we'll call and talk before we hang out. And definitely like right after college, I wasn't hanging out with my parents too much, or she wasn't coming over, so it was like who died kind of situated because that was just a relationship at the time. And then so I knew it was big news, and she sat me down and she's like, I have something to tell you. I didn't want to tell you when you were younger because I didn't, I don't remember the exact words. Maybe I wouldn't understand or whatever. And she told me I had a half sister that was adopted out after I was born, which was an interesting scenario. I didn't quite understand it. At the time I was just like, okay, like I don't know how to process this. It's like somebody I never grew up with. It doesn't really affect me too much now, aside from the fact she was trying to get into contact with her at the time, and I did get a chance to meet her. So it was just weird to hear about. I remember feeling a little upset that I couldn't have been told earlier. Like I felt like I was emotionally mature enough a while ago that I could have been told earlier to maybe process it as grown up or something. But she ended up living a really good life with a really good family, and it was good all around. And for her. And then my mom met up with her later and had a little close relationship, and I think that was good that they did that. But it was I think she just wasn't ready for a second one at the time. There was something that I thought was pretty stand up of my dad. It was with somebody else, some guy I don't know, and my dad actually offered to take care of the kid rather than her go up for adoption. So he was offering to take care of another child.
Wow.
Or my grandma helped a lot with that at the time. So
Yeah.
they would watch the child rather than give it up for adoption. Now I thought that was really stand up.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, he was probably drunk when he said it, but it's still really nice of him. Okay, so the sister was actually after you were born.
Yeah.
Born then.
So
Well, I mean, yeah, that's
really weird.
I didn't realize that. I thought it was actually before.
Yeah, and if you can imagine it, like the feelings I'd be going through is like, okay, why was I picked to stay, and why was she, for adoption? Like, and typically, I think what would happen in those situations is adoption would be first, then you would keep the one because you weren't ready. So it was, I think that was related to my dad having, my grandma, and or I don't know, I'm not sure because my grandma wouldn't even know when I was born. So
yeah, that's very cool of your dad.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool to hear about.
Yeah. So, yeah, from the community counseling center, you're eventually fired. First time getting fired?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was I mean, that would have been my like third job.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You worked at Busy Beaver. I remember that.
Yeah. That was over the summers, and but this was my first career job, and it was very apparent like the months prior to that it was inevitably going to happen. There's a certain amount of like paperwork you have to do every month. I was always late with it. I wasn't engaged. I was pretty much just waiting for it to happen and kind of milking my paychecks up until that point. Should have been looking. I think I was looking ahead of time. I just never looked too hard. And again, I wasn't grown up. I didn't realize like how big a deal it is for your career to stall like this. Like at the time, it was just like, all right, I'm going to milk it. I'll figure it out when it happens. And now now if you're really, really that unhappy with a job, you start looking for another one. You don't like just wait to lose it essentially and have that on your record. But I was pretty immature. So I let it happen. I did have a savings. So it was a pretty okay job out of college. Ashtabula doesn't pay the best, but cost of living's low. So it was like I had a savings, and I just blew through my savings for 3 to 4 months, kind of playing video games and not even really telling my parents I didn't have a job. I don't know if you knew that, but I didn't tell anybody.
Honestly, we weren't hanging out a lot at this point.
Okay.
I think I might have been married at this point and was just kind of, how it goes. So yeah, I don't think I even really hung out. I was actually surprised because it's like eventually I found out you had moved back in with your parents, and I was just like, oh shit. I didn't even know what was going on.
Yeah, if I didn't tell you that, yeah, there's a lot of shame involved in that. Like you graduate college, you feel like you're doing all right, and then just to have to tell people like that is not a fun feeling. So I just kind of avoided it.
Yeah, trust me, I know, man. Moving back in with your mom when you're, fucking 29, 30 years old, like I had to do, it's embarrassing. Although not that. I mean, I didn't care that much, but it's still. So after this, you start working at a factory, and now I know you said you were ashamed. You're ashamed for the parents. Were you ashamed of working at the factory?
Yeah. So I had that. I blew through my savings. I moved in with my parents. They more than welcoming for me to come back, and
good parents mostly are.
Yeah. And my mom and Dave pretty supportive. I leached off them for a little while. It's not really called leeching when it's family, but I wasn't trying as hard as I should have to obtain a job. So Dave did sit me down at one point in time, and he gave me very good advice. It's like, when you don't have a job, you should treat looking for a job as a job, which is essentially for 8 hours, you're out there either filling out applications, talking with people, asking, like you're treating it like a full-time. And I wasn't doing that. I was sending out 3 or 4 applications and saying, woe is me, when nobody called me back. And then I eventually just applied to everywhere. And And that was a good thing. And I got the factory job. That was the first place I called back, and they needed people, and I was terrible at it. And yeah, you asked how I felt about factory jobs is after you get a 4-year diploma. And I remember even being interviewed, and they're just like, "You have a psychology degree? You want to work here?" Like even the interviewer kind of said that, and I was just like, "Yeah, this is what I can find." And I was ashamed at the time of being a college graduate in a factory. When I look back on it now, I know a ton of hard workers. I know some really, really good people, some really hard workers that have raised some good families on a factory income. And it's not as good as it used to pay, say, in the 60s. But I've done rather well for myself. And I don't think it's bad at all. It was the thing that kind of forced me to grow up. It was one of those things that I sucked at the start. I worked through it with effort and blood and sweat. And I worked my way up very quickly with that blood and sweat. And I felt a lot of pride for that. So looking back, I was ashamed to tell people that I worked at a factory. Now I'm not at all. And I feel bad for that person back in the day that felt bad for it, because it's honest work. It's a lot of the stuff we have around, like kind of a depressed area of Ashtabula is factory work. And I don't besmirch anybody that does that. And I if Xander got into factory work like when he was 16, 17, 18, I'd be so happy to hear it, because I know it would kind of let him know what work is like. And from my experience, when you put that effort in, you actually get rewarded for it. You get promotions over time, and from effort. And I really like that. I'm an achievement motivator. I like hearing when I'm doing a good job. I like seeing results. And I couldn't do that at a community counseling center for whatever reason. My effort didn't work, or maybe it's my skill set. With a low skill job like factory work, the effort does pay off. So it's
easier to shine.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing is factory work not a lot of people want to do it anymore. So like I work as hard now as like everybody at factory work did in the 60s. I would have just been an average, but because like not a lot of people want to do it, it's a low skilled position. It was easy to shine a little bit.
Yeah. How do you think your parents felt about it?
They were proud of the big ones. They were proud of me graduating college. They probably saw higher things for me in the regards that I was like, a relatively good student on honor roll a lot of the times. And they probably expected something, bigger for me, I suppose. Yeah. And so that I would imagine there's some disappointment there. That's how I would take it. They would never probably admit that outright. They'd want to still be supportive and happy for me for what I found. But I would imagine they expected a little bit more from me. And, that can be a hard pill to swallow. Now that I'm older, it's just, it's just the thing. Like, I don't, who cares?
I remember when we were younger, I always felt like your parents, and I'm not saying they did, but maybe they did. And I'm not saying this in a bad way, but I felt like your parents, like, really pushed you to do shit, like school wise. Like they wanted you to be like an academic, you know what I mean? Like really, so I don't know. I could see them feeling that way, but I also just knowing your parents know that they're just so loving and care about you anyways. Like you're right. They would never ever say like, we thought you might be, a doctor or something like that or whatever. But yeah. I think you're doing pretty great. So,
Yeah, I love it. I really like my job. It has its stressful moments. I've been promoted to a keyboard warrior at this point in time, but it's a good thing. We're in a good place.
Yeah, and you're able to take care of your family. I personally, I don't know how people do the factory jobs. I'm impressed and kind of like, I'm not a person who thinks that I don't look down on them. I just wish I could do that and not want to blow my fucking brains out like I'm sure I would. But that's me. I'm lazy, so
there's a repetitive nature that's tough to get over for sure. That's what almost like helped me grow up. Is I think there's a repetitive nature to most jobs.
Yes, there
is. That you don't find your like dream job. That one forces you to realize that very quickly, and you can either deal with it or you can't.
And that's what I told people when I was doing the like working in Central Sterile, the SPD and stuff. It's a glorified factory job. Like you have this station here, you have that station there, you have that station there. You go from one to the other. The product comes through. You do what you got to do with it. You package it. Same thing. And you're right. Most jobs are just factory jobs, and which is probably why I've just been miserable in most jobs that I've ever had. So,
Yeah, well, I've had this theory is like people. I don't know. It doesn't always work out, but when you're a kid, a lot of times life is happy-go-lucky and happy. And I don't think kids were as happy 100 years ago as they are now. They're ill prepared for how mundane and rough that a 9 to 5 job can be later on in life, where they're just expecting it to always be, everybody's going to be a doctor, lawyer kind of thing. There's no, you actually have to put the work in, and you might have to do something you don't want to do just to have a roof over your head kind of thing. It's a tough reality sometimes.
Yeah. So while this is happening, I just want to say, like, as long as I've known you, you're not an emotional person. You've never have been. But the only person I've ever seen you get emotional about is your grandmother. And so I knew when she eventually passed away, like, I knew that was a tough thing for you. Like, I remember being genuinely worried about you because I just knew how close you were to her and how much you cared about her. So, while this is happening, she does pass away. So what now? Like, is there anything you wanted to say about her? Like, what was the impact that she had on you in your life? Why were you so close with your grandmother?
She would be a person, and I'm sure a lot of people have that have this is no matter what, it's almost like a rock, like just this really stable, loving force. Like I don't even know how to, like, she just emitted this loving energy towards me, and she did. Like I lived with her and my dad in the same house, so she helped raise me.
Mm-hmm.
She was always just this force of love that I could always count on. And every interaction I had, and she wasn't like soft on me or anything like that. It was just if I ever needed anybody, she was the one that was there for me. And it's just I have all. If I think back, I can think of very few negative interactions with my grandma, because there was just so much positive interaction where it was just like I have all these great memories of playing hide and seek with her just kind of chilling out on the couch, us watching Murder, She Wrote together, like just these really cool things. Like before we go to bed, I remember when I was really young, she'd like rub my back until I go to sleep. Like all these really, really positive emotions. Like I just loved her so much for what she gave me there. So yeah, it was rough when she passed away, but I can't, like, it was just I'm just glad to have what I had with her.
Yeah, definitely. So eventually you kick your parents out of the house and you buy it out from under them, right? That's how this happened, right? Because I don't know the whole process of how you ended up owning that house. I know Dave and your mom eventually, they bought that other house.
Yeah.
Was that before or after? Explain this to me, please.
So I would love it if it was like a hostile takeover, that I found some legal loophole to just take over. That'd be awesome.
They walk in and you're just like smoking a cigarette for no reason. You don't smoke. You're just like, so I'm gonna need you guys to get your shit out by like midnight tonight.
No, it's I was probably overstaying my welcome. I had my factory job, was still not in the best place, but I was making a lot of money, because when you don't have bills and you live at home, and you have a job, you make money rather quickly. And it was brought up, hey, do you want to buy this house? We're going to buy another house. Now, it is something to be said. Is I probably overstayed my welcome a little bit. Like you'd expect, okay, you're starting to make an income. I remember using, like, I think my income to go to Niagara Falls one time or something like that. And it was like, oh, I'm not actually like moving out kind of thing. So I think they may have moved away from me to just leave me there kind of thing. That's my theory, and I'm going with it.
But that's really funny.
Yeah.
That's sad. That's sad, though.
I got a nice house out of it.
Yeah, okay. You do. You really do. So after you own the house, you start working at a different factory. You seem to be much happier there.
Yeah, the first factory was
RTS.
EMSCO was a terrible factory work out. Really, really overbearing boss. I did learn later on that, like, having a boss you hate isn't necessarily the worst thing. It creates kind of this figure that everybody can shit on. But it was rough to work for him directly under him once I became a supervisor. So I ended up getting laid off because I didn't want to join a union and pay the union dues. So they ended up laying me off as one of the first options. And I remember at the time, like I had become, I moved my way up from like backup lead to shipping to supervisor in like the span of like a year and a half. And they liked me, and I was I gained a confidence from that, where it was just like I knew what I wanted to do. Now where I say this allowed me to grow up is when I got laid off there, I wasn't going to rely on anybody. Like I was confident that I was skilled. I was a good supervisor, had one of the best shifts at the time. It took me 2 weeks. I could have used unemployment for 6 months at the time. It took me 2 weeks to get a new job as a supervisor. And I had a lot of options, and a lot of people saw my 2 to 3 years experience as supervisor. My world was much more open than when I got out of college. Like experience goes a long way.
Yeah.
College.
And we should add, like, I'm sure your psychology degree didn't hurt. Like, I'm sure a lot of the things that you did, that helped it along. So it's not like you wasted your time getting a degree.
No.
Yeah.
No, I'll tell anybody is like, I do give that advice. Don't pick the first happy subject that you pick. But it never hurt me. It always helped me to have that on the resume. Yeah. They would have considered, if they saw fired a community counseling center factory job, I wouldn't be as considered for as many positions if I didn't have that. Hey, he could get through 4 years of college as well, to move sideways into another supervisor role and help me move up beyond that to what I do now.
Yeah. So after you own the house, you're working at this other factory. That brilliant young man that you became friends with back in high school, he ends up having to move in with you. We had a great time, didn't we?
I do call it the dark times.
Did call it the dark times.
I know. I hope I'm not hurting your feelings too much or anything with that. I think we were both in kind of a negative spot. So
we were both in bad places.
Yeah. So it was it wasn't good. It was just a lot of, I think we were both feeding off our own depression kind of thing, where that never kind of went away with me. It wasn't like you moving in or anything like that caused that. It was, that never really went away. And I think we had a tendency to feed off of that. I think you were, I guess I should ask you the kind of stuff you were going through at the time. I think you explained to me one time you felt a lot of shame with having a divorce, which I could relate with now, with my shame with the factory job, is like, you just don't feel good about it. And I couldn't relate to at the time, still haven't technically been married, but I if it was anything like that, I get it. But yeah, I think we kind of fed off a bad place we were kind of in at that time.
Yeah. We are not people who are meant to be in close proximity to each other for too long.
Yeah.
We have our little time. It's like, when you're younger and you have like a really good friend and you spend a lot of time with them, and then like if they stayed the night and then they stayed and hung out with you all day the next day, like by 3 o'clock, you're just kind of shitty to each other. You're ready for them to go home, or you're ready to go. You know what I mean? We never got out of that, and we're going to throw Pat in there with that it's like, we're at this moment, we're in our 30s, and when you guys come and visit, I'm so happy when you get here, and by the time you leave, I'm just like, bye. Like, I just think I'm glad you guys are leaving because I need a fucking break. But I'm not being shitty. Like, that's just the way it is, and that's our personalities the way they are. They just, if we don't have someone to focus on, we turn on each other. Basically, is what happens.
Yeah, I can see that. I do actually remember in Kent, I used to bring up, like, I loved you guys a lot, and I remember being just like missing you guys a lot when I went to Kent. You guys would come visit, and I remember saying, like, it felt happier when you guys would visit because we have that time apart to appreciate. And you guys were just like, you're a shitty friend. You should always appreciate it or whatever. So I'm going to say that to you now. You're just a shitty friend. You should always appreciate when we're around. Son of a bitch.
Well, I mean, and it's like, that's a testament to the friendship, is that we're just going to try to bring each other down as much as we can in anything that we say. So you're working at the factory. You meet a nice girl. Name's Jessica. How long did you end up dating her?
I want to say it was 4 years.
Wow, really? That long?
Yeah, maybe it was 3. We did have like a little split in the middle of it, but it was finally met a girl, and that was like that was, yeah, my first kind of medium term relationship. Everything else was kind of a lot more short term, nothing very long term. So it was we took it kind of slow, and we eventually moved in with each other. I still had the house. I actually rented out the house while I moved in with her because she lived closer to my work. It was, and she had a nice house.
Okay, that's when you moved out. So then I know you lived in those little apartments that. So when Dave and your mom bought that house, there was like a little uh motel there. Like
Yeah,
there's like this little apartment. Did you live in
still
one of
there.
those?
What's that?
Did you live
Yeah,
in one of those? Okay. Was that
yeah,
after
that
you
was
broke up with
after.
her?
Yeah, that was after the breakup where I still had tenants in my house.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure where I was going at that point in time. And I kind of moved in back with them, and then they offered, the apartments. So I started paying rent in the apartment because I was still doing okay. But yeah, just not sure what I wanted to do. And I really liked having tenants that were just kind of paying my mortgage. That was kind of a good situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just ended up living there actually for quite some time in the small little apartment. That's again, like a lot of people would, I didn't feel like, I guess I felt shame for having to rely on my parents again a little bit, but I liked the little apartments and having to rent out another place because I don't think I had that huge attachment to the home that a lot of other people would want to like move right back in. I was just kind of happy that my mortgage was being paid, and I didn't need much more than an apartment at the time. So once I got a new girlfriend and stuff like that, I did want to kind of kick the tenants out and move back in, but until that point, it was
See, I always found that so weird. I think I would have a hard time doing that. Like, oh, this is my home. Now I'm just going to rent it out to some people for a couple years. And you know what? Now I'm going to move back in. Like, I would be like, I'd have to go through and just top to bottom, scrub the place down, just like, I don't know who these people are really. So yeah, it's interesting that you were able to do that and just not.
Yeah. And when you move back into place, plus they have dogs. I mean, obviously I have dogs too, but it's a big carpet scrub. Big cleaning. It's absolutely necessary to just feel a little bit fresh and new when you come back in there. And yeah, it's a couple $100.
Yeah. So you're with this girl for a couple years. Things end up not working out.
Yeah.
So you guys just broke up. I think I got this one confused with another girl. I'm trying to remember. You just had so many of them. You just went through them, though. Who was the one who said that we should turn down Kanye because George probably wouldn't like it?
I don't recall that.
Oh, I remember one of them did it. I was like, "You fucking bitch! You better not be in Alan's life for too long."
I'm actually kind of forgetting a whole girlfriend that was also a medium term one, Amber. That might have been her. That sounds like her.
No, it wasn't Amber. I remember Amber, but
Okay.
It's fine. So this girl, like, you're pretty heartbroken afterwards.
Yeah, it was rough. It's pretty mutual. We didn't like each other at the end as far as the breakup's concerned. I think most people that say mutual, it usually just means you're the one that got the heart broken. But it was she did break up with me. It wasn't going to work out. Like it was we both recognized it wasn't going to work out long term. It was another, I don't know, like the factory job helped me grow up as far as like a career goes. Jesse helped me grow up as far as like relationship goes. And I think even at the end of it, I didn't fully understand like what a real relationship is, especially midterm is like, you're not going to be happy all the time.
Yeah. Happiness, is where you have to figure out your own happy medium, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, if you're expecting like the honeymoon phase to kind of like last for 10 years, and that's an unrealistic expectation. Yeah. So you got to recognize it's not gonna be happy. So what you're really trying to test for a long-term relationship is 10 years down the line, are you going to still be able to be with this person? Are you going to be able to support each other? And I didn't have that with Jesse. I do have that now, thankfully. It's really nice.
Yeah. So what was it that I want to ask real quick because we're getting closer to the end. We got to kind of get this done. What is the Peter principle?
Oh, yeah. So my career kind of blossomed around the time I was with Jesse. Is that I came from a middle management position, which was like just a supervisor. And I started working my way up as a scheduler. I'm right now a continuous improvement manager / scheduler. Effort. I worked, 50, 55 hours a week, but I loved it. Like I got a lot of enjoyment out of it. I moved up. I got a lot of raises, a lot of promotions, some bonuses in there. It was really good until I reached a bad point where I eventually became plant manager at RTS, and I wasn't at all ready. I was kind of thrown into the position because the previous plant manager was kind of grooming me to be a backup plant manager when he wasn't there, and he was kind of trying to plan to retire eventually. So I lucked out extremely well that he mentored me, but I probably needed about another 3 to 4 years under his tutelage to kind of become an effective plant manager. So he ended up leaving. I ended up being plant manager. I failed miserably. Peter principle is essentially working up to a position to where you're incompetent. So everybody will work up to the position that they're competent at, and then they'll get promoted to a position they're not fit for. And if they don't get with it super quickly, then they get demoted or fired, and that's where you're essentially at. And you can always use education and college to kind of get beyond that point, but you'll always work up to your incompetence is the Peter principle.
Gotcha. All right, I got to go murder my dogs real quick. Go ahead and tell Eugene about how you met Hannah, and tell him about what it was about her that you ended up liking so much. I'll be back in just a minute.
Oh, I just assumed you met Hannah playing Pokemon Go.
Not at all. Not at all. She actually worked with me at RTS. She was my subordinate, which I love bringing up that I was her boss. I still say I'm her boss. It's not actually true. I just say it to piss her off. We both. I was on the factory floor. I thought she was cute. At that point in time. But as a supervisor, you don't kind of act on those anything like that. We both ended up getting promoted at the same time or around the same time to the office. And I became scheduler. She became inside sales for selling our plastic parts at our factory. And at that point in time, we were in separate departments to where that would be kind of more appropriate.
Okay, I was going to say, there's always that cardinal rule where you don't shit where you eat.
Yeah, well, we still work together. It's just it wouldn't work out if we were. It might not have worked out if we were in the same department, or obviously if I was her boss. That I don't think it would have happened in the first place. I didn't actually like the idea when we first started dating of us working together. I was always been opposed to that. Whenever I was a supervisor, if I had employees or people that worked around me that had those situations, it always ended up very poor. So I knew from experience that it typically didn't work out. I didn't want to do that, but I ended up really, really, really liking her, so much to the point where I was just like, okay, I like her so much that I'm willing to risk my job for it because I want to be around this person that much. So it was like I want to say I shot my load. I that's not the phrase I need, but I went for it and asked her, out for lunch, after dinner, and she eventually said yes. And she had the same exact feelings as me. I don't want to shit where I work is the non-beautiful way to say it, but we didn't want to work together and date. But she had the same worries, and then we ended up hitting it off on everything. And then we'd commiserate on that, oh, should we be doing that? And there's probably some kind of excitingness to that a little bit, where it's oh, we're not supposed to be doing this, But we both kind of had that feeling, is I don't know if we should do this because we work together, but because we liked each other so much, we got over that. But yeah, it was I was willing to lose my job or get another job just because I liked her that much. I like being around her and hanging out at work.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Would you quit this job for her, and instead of committing career suicide, at least you don't want to have that little skirmish on your resume.
Yeah, well, it's we are super professional. We try so hard to make sure that we're not bringing that stuff to work, bringing up issues. If we have an argument at home, we're trying to, we keep it very separated, and we've been complimented on that. But there's other things you can't control when you date somebody at work. We ended up with 3 other couples at work that caused problems. They were the ones that I had seen, where they were creating arguing at work, wouldn't show up to work because they got in a big argument. And everybody would always say oh, but Hannah and Alan are together. And, we had the benefit we weren't in the same departments, so that usually didn't create issues, but we were always grandfathered in. So the fact that we were together and got grandfathered in created problems for the company. So it created problems, even though we're not directly creating problems. So I get why companies don't do it. If they didn't like me anymore and got rid of me, I'd be fine. I'd still, obviously pick Hannah over the job. yeah, I came to that acceptance. I want to be with this person so much that I'm willing to halt my career a little bit.
Um, so after years of being careful, oh wait, no, there's some other stuff I wanted to ask, but we're gonna jump to it.
Okay.
You eventually slip up and you impregnate this poor young woman,
Wait, you got to use his words. Shoot his.
and you
Got my word.
shoot your load. You do big comes in her pussy.
Big cummies.
Big cummies. I saw a thing like a long time ago that was just like, when I hear you say my husband and I are trying for a kid, all I hear is my husband does big comes in my pussy all the time. And it's been stuck in my head ever since. So so first off, before this, did you expect to ever have kids?
I was always on the fence about it. One of the first year I was with Hannah, we actually went on a vacation. We both were doing well. We had some supplemental, we had extra income to spend to do fun things. We went to Iceland. We had a great vacation. And I started realizing I could be, this is the first time I was like really just genuinely like happy all the time. Like for the most part, almost always happy. And I'm like, oh, I got to kind of keep this going. And one of those things I found, I love travel, and I found that I love travel with Hannah. So it was like, I could have just kept doing that. Like I could just, have all this extra income. I feel like that's a good time to have a kid. Start talking about kids is when you can, afford to do it. But it was like, I could just keep doing this the rest of my life. So it was always up in the air. I don't know. I can't recall how Hannah felt. I think she eventually did want to have kids, but might've been in the same boat. She could go without them. I think we were kind of in the same boat, or I don't know, maybe she'll yell at me later and be like, no, I always want to have kids. Shut up. But
you don't know me.
You don't know me. But it was like something I always entertained. I was always kind of on the fence about. And Xander was an accident, I just in case he's
well. Hold on a second. Because I want to ask about this, and I want you. We haven't really talked about this, and as close of friends as we are, I'm just surprised. But I really want to know what was like your immediate response, like in your mind, when Hannah said that she was pregnant.
So she can back this up. I did not believe it. So I had a lot of scares growing up, as you would as a young man. Where I didn't do the safe thing all the time, and it always ended up not being the case. Like everybody,
well, you want to live, right? I mean,
what's that?
You want to live, right? I mean, you gotta live once in a while. So,
not the smartest choice as a young adult, especially before the point where I could financially afford it. Is I didn't believe it. And I thought it was one of those situations like something was happening a little bit later than it should have. It'll be fine. It was, well, my immediate response was take the test again. Was essentially it. And take it again, because I was pretty sure it wasn't the case, just because, I just thought it wouldn't be the case. So once it did happen, I was pretty sure about it. And I did say, like, there was always the chance that it could happen no matter what. So I was, we can do this. This isn't the end of the world. We love each other a lot, kind of stuff. But my immediate reaction was take the test again.
So how long did it take before you kind of, did you start to get excited at all?
Yeah. It was really, really surreal. Like it didn't feel real until I would say like the baby shower and like some baby gifts started coming in, and you start seeing like the little boots and stuff like that, and little shoes, and it was just like, oh my gosh, this is really coming. Like, and you just don't. I didn't know what to expect. There's like there's like 3 or 4 things in my life that I just didn't know if it like what was going to happen. I wasn't sure of myself, really unsure of myself. This is one of them where it was just like, I'm going to be a father. Can I actually do this? Am I going to be a good father? Kind of, I think what a lot of fathers go through. I very much felt that I wasn't sure about it. And then once the gifts started coming in, and then I got like, there was actually like a panic mode where it was just like, I don't know if I can. And there was never any talk about like pressing the red button, abortion or anything like that. It was just like real self-doubt that kind of hits you. And but it solidified once he was born. That was a really beautiful time. I think it's very stereotypical for everybody to, a lot of people cry during it. A lot of people experience things. I felt very similar things to other fathers where it was very magical when it happened. And that made me feel a lot better because I could just feel the love.
Sorry, Michelle's fucking.
Oh, I thought you were just like telling me like, oh God, you're talking too much.
No, not at all. I'm sorry. I was really enjoying what you were saying, and
is this
just move on, God.
I'm sorry. No, I really wanted to hear more about all that. I
Alan,
apologize.
your field, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. So eventually you have
Have
Xander.
You ever tried dogs? Dogs are really cool.
You have Xander. He's a ginger, just like you. Do you have regrets? You have guilt about that for bringing another one of them into the world?
I try to dye his hair as much as I can. No, he's I was really stoked to have a ginger. I was like a super fucking adorable kid. I know you'd like joke about like just the extreme amount of nerdiness, but I was like an adorable kid. You were too. I remember seeing old pictures of you, where it's like that gingerness is like has a lot of appeal. Then I feel like when you hit middle school and high school, that's where it's like I always say I never met a good looking ginger man. Like they're just gross looking, but so I feel bad about that. So luckily he had the cute ginger babiness, but it's a brown now. It's actually a blonde brown.
Oh, thank God. And then after this, you do the smartest thing that I think you've ever done, and you reflect on yourself and your life. You think about growing up. You think about all the choices you made in life, and you decide I cannot let this boy grow up an only child. And so you have another one. A little guy named Connor, who I don't know if I even met him yet.
You would have come over just to stop by when you were in town.
That's right. Yeah. And so you have Connor. How'd you guys feel when she had the second one?
Yeah, very much planned.
Okay.
Not in so much like what you're saying is we need to provide Xander
we don't want Xander to grow up to be a fucking weirdo with no social skills.
Well, that's I did want to ask because you always bring it up as like, yeah, having a sibling is the best thing you could do. I personally know people with siblings that don't always have the best social skills. I know people that are only children that don't have the best social skills. I think it does have to do with if you find kind of that brotherly love with somebody, like you do need to find it with somebody.
And that's just something I think because that's been established. Like that's established lore is that you're the way you are because you didn't have a brother or a sister when really you'd be the exact same person you are probably if you had one. Because yes, I think a lot of it is just kind of like who you surround yourself with and who you end up lucky enough to the friends that you make, like you said. So sometimes friends are more important than actual siblings.
Yeah, well, I feel like you just need somebody. You got to try to avoid any kind of isolation. There's a bunch of psychology experiments about rats and isolation. It's never good. Yeah. Never works out.
So this is our last question. You're getting older. You're getting fatter.
Yeah.
Like what's coming next? What do you think's going to happen next? Are you looking at other jobs? Are you set where you're at?
Well, that's a good question. It's probably the last tough decision, and it's not like set in stone. I've had to make is for the next 18 years of my life are very. I want them to be stable, if anything. I don't want a situation where I got to ask tough questions of, do I not have a job? Do we have to move? Do we have to I want stability more than anything. So, like some crazy stuff has happened at work. We've gone through a couple of plant managers. I don't think they'd ever entertain me again because of that. I failed the first time, but I'm very, very good at what I do right now. I feel very stable. And I'm okay with that for the next 18 years of life. Now, I did talk about the last podcast is I don't think the human mind's not meant for that. Like you're supposed to struggle a little bit. You're supposed to strive for things. And I probably would. I probably could if I put the effort in. but I don't want to do that right now. I want the next 18 years of my life to just keep going what it is. I have stable income. I have extra income to do whatever I want with my family. And I want that to stay the same.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to do. For me, I don't think it's necessarily like I think it would be more important for other people to keep striving for their careers, to go, do other things, that they would actually be a better parent because they're doing stuff like that. I don't think I need that. And like I said, it's not set in stone. I might find out later that this is like really, really depressing, but to me, and that I am actually like a worse person for it, and I need to kind of move on. But stability is my number one thing right now.
Yeah, instead of striving, you're now providing.
That's a good way to put it. I like that. I like that, Eugene.
So do you think if you didn't have children, you'd have a different mindset right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd have to keep going. I am very like I said, it's called achievement motivated. I get a lot of pride from like succeeding at projects, doing more with myself, and always like volunteering for the next thing. I've stepped back on that. I no longer work 55-hour weeks. It's like, if I'm getting like, if I have an 8-hour job, I'll skip lunch, but I want to pick up the babies the kids at the babysitters and be home. I don't want to work until 8 at night and not see them, kind of thing. So it's the career will definitely take the stall, maybe for the worst, because the job actually they didn't take anything away from me, but I'm still working like a couple hours less. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to get by. I do kind of feel swamped, but I think they appreciate me enough to keep me around, and I do see it as a stable job. They've kept me around for 8 years now. I think they'll I'm in it for the long haul.
Yeah. All right. Well, Alan, thank you so much. I could talk even longer, but we kind of got to wrap this up. Eugene's got places to be, things to do.
I mean,
I'm just kidding. 2 hours, we're good. We'll have Alan back on at some point, probably on one of our other shows to hang out. We had a good time for the stream with No Name, and I had a great time doing this. So honestly, thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been great. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this. Like pretty much, I was already looking forward to it. But then when you gave me your your bio, I was just like, holy shit! Like there's a lot of stuff I didn't know about you, and it was nice to learn about it. So yes, thank you.
I hope it wasn't too boring. I
enjoyed it.
Okay, good.
And if anybody else is bored, the hell with you. Whoever you are, how could you be bored by hearing someone's life story? Unless, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people with boring life stories, but that was not a boring one. I enjoyed that. So thanks for coming here. And listeners, viewers, we'll be back on Tuesday with the stream with No Name. If Mike Melcher was here, he'd be yelling at me to plug some stuff. I will say we have a Twitter now. It's at 3 a.m. radio. So you can go check that out. We have a Facebook page. You can find us on there. 3 a.m. Productions. We got more stuff.
Is that linked down below?
No, well, you know what? Actually, if you're watching this right now, it's not a link, but I actually added a watermark. So if you click on that, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and click on it. It'll bring it up right there, and you can subscribe. Boom, just like that. But yeah, that link will be down at the bottom. Make sure you mash it, and we'll provide some links for some stuff. But thanks again, and we will see you guys on Tuesday. Have a great rest of your weekend.